Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I find you well this afternoon, or it may be a morning to you, or it may be an evening time to you. But nevertheless, I believe you're okay. You are well, wherever you are, right? Sim Koma Simbarashe Munemba. Thank you for coming through. Koma Houston, did you say? I hope you're good. Zara on gap. I hope you're good. Chula Bishlude, how you doing? Zimbabwe 24/7. Really say no citizen. I hope you're good. The Undertaker. Really say. Smish, how you doing? Kindo. I hope you're good. Um, King of Throwbacks. How are you? The Skillers. Really say. Munashe Pira. I hope you're good. Adam Madamo. How you doing? I hope you're good. Answer, how are you? Jens Wakura, really say Mafira Kureva 18. Thank you very much for the follow. I followed you back. I see the others who are listening anonymously. Thank you very much, for joining us. Feziwe, how you doing? I hope you're okay where you are. If you can repost this, it would be very much appreciated. If you repost it, very much appreciate. Comment Peter, as they say, welcome to the space. Malcolm D. Makombe, how you doing? I hope you're good. Thank you for the follow. I followed you back. Right. Yes. So thank you very much, for that. Oh, yesterday we were talking about the gig that Thomas Mapfumo, got from Chivai to go and play at Ja Praise's wedding. I think it's happening in the next month or so. And then there's going to be as well a birthday for Chigananda. So Mkanya is accepted to go and work there. To him, it's work, but others, you've got a different view. The alchemist, how you doing? Chigananda is actually also promised that could that paper 2 and paper 3. He was talking of a house and he was talking of a high-end vehicle, etc, etc. So I know what that pakaiba. Mdara wanigizwe, mdara we. Runzira Murenje, how you doing? Thank you very much for the follow. I follow you back. I hope you're good. Flax, how are you? I hope everything is okay with you. Uh, right. Ismail, how you doing? I hope you're good. I hope you're good. Nkoma Ismail. All right. Nkoma Brian Mavura, how you doing? I hope you're doing fine. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, so today I've got 3 topics that I've condensed in one, uh, but they are all related. They feed into each other. The first one is going to deal with rhetoric versus action, and in fact, I wanted to do this show. I think it was a couple of days ago. No, it was yesterday that I wanted to do it. A couple of days ago. But I ended up, changing it. I think so. Yeah, I think it was all, yeah. But so the rhetoric versus action is something, that is informed by the video that you saw where Emerson Mnangagwa said, oh, he was happy with the thing, um, where he was saying that he was expecting the CAP 3 to sail through parliament. And those people needed to make sure that it happens. So he did not even hesitate in signing the bill into law. Um, but, when I saw that video, it then took me back to the other video where he was speaking about persuaders, etc. As if, I don't even, Rakanyembedzera kuzungaira, so as if he doesn't even know you know what was going on, and yet is architecture. So not so long ago, as I was saying, he went before journalists. He invited journalists. He went before journalists, and he made a very deliberate, statement where he was saying, "Oh, I'm a constitutionalist." Where he was even saying, I respect the aspect of term limits. I will not go beyond my term." And then he was asked if he if people who persuade him, and say, "I was persuade persuaders not to persuade me into violating the constitution, or into me not being a constitutionalist." But I want to believe now, when I'm looking back at that event, I want to believe that it was a calculated event, because whatever it is that came out of that event was not accidental. Him speaking about being a constitutionalist, yes, we know he's spoken about this on the international fora. He was a CNN Amampo, and he was with that lady from Sky News, where he spoke about not wanting to extend or to go beyond the 5 years. So he presented himself as a person who has actually moved away from the Mugabe era, and yet, unbeknown to us, is probably jealous of Robert Mugabe. That Mugabe, if I think if he has it, his own way, he would want to do the 37 years that Mugabe did. But unfortunately, the biological clock is no longer on his side, because dude can just tap out anytime. He's in his 80s. Some say he's approaching 90, but that is where he is. But what I'm trying to say is, when he spoke to the journalist, the language that he used wasn't accidental. It was language that I now believe was crafted to reassure the public, to sort of calm any speculation that was lingering around at that time. And he wanted to give this projection of him, of giving an image of a leader, who is kind of guided by constitutional principle. That is all what we can read, from that. But then, if you fast forward to this past weekend, you could see that there's a total flip of the script, complete turnaround, right? The same guy who said, "I will persuade the persuaders not to persuade me," is the one who ended up congratulating the same persuaders for passing Cap 3. Those that he had said, "They are the persuaders, so I'm going to persuade them not to persuade me." But last weekend, we saw him congratulating them for passing the amendment, for giving the amendment thumbs up with a two-thirds majority in both houses. And we all know that, that amendment, we have all been critical, and we've all been pointing out to this reality. Yekuti, this was a politically engineered, divisive, and strategically timed thing. Timed because he knew 2027 was coming. And with the 2027, the significance of 2027, ladies and gentlemen, is that is the period where ZANU-PF have to do their elective congress, choose a new leader, because this guy would have served, his 2 terms. So this is why I'm saying it was strategically timed. I think we've gone, over this, but Zogorene Simba anyway. And whatever it is that, he intended, to do, whatever it is that, he tried, to do at that particular moment in time, him passing himself as a constitutionalist, but all of a sudden now, that constitutionalist, rhetoric has suddenly evaporated. It is no longer there. And at the weekend, he replaced that by celebration of a process that we've all been arguing. It's undermining the very principles that he himself claimed to defend. So to me, that was, rhetoric in the beginning. But the actions that we witnessed this past, weekend can lead us to conclude, something else. To say Kuti he was in it all along. I don't know if there were any people that ever believed him when he was saying that I'm a constitutionalist. Remember, this guy, the way that he tried to be the president of Zimbabwe. Remember the 2004 Cholocho, declaration. He's been trying for a minute, only for him to succeed in 2017. And do you honestly believe that this was going to be a two-term president? How many bodies has he walked over for him to get to where he is, today? But one thing, that us, I think us as Zimbabweans, there's this thing that we need to be woke. Because if you are looking at what he said back then and what he's saying, that contradiction, ladies and gentlemen, it is not a subtle, contradiction. Maybe he thought that, it's something, that was going to be hidden or something that was going to be ambiguous. But no, if you want to look at it analytically, critically, you can see, Kuti, whatever it is that has happened here is a direct collusion between political messaging and political action. And this is what politicians are very good at. And all politicians are guilty of this. Because if you want to look at the collusion, it tells us something that is very important. Kuti earlier on he was using a constitutional language. And him using that constitutional language was kind of strategic. It was not sincere. It was for him and for those who actually understand some of these things. They can relegate that to just political, theater, a performance being done by somebody, an action, an acting being done by somebody who is trying to manage optics. And there was not even any commitment to guide, his behavior. It's just unfortunate that we are in an environment where executive power is dominating and is always, dominated. And under those environments, this kind of strategic ambiguity is common with people like Emerson Mnangagwa. They speak, they talk to you about one thing in terms of constitutionalism, And they can only do that when it is convenient for them. They can only do that when they know that this is going to be buy me time. They can only do that when they know could they want to reduce any resistance. Remember, within the internal politics of ZANU-PF, there was something, or there is still something that is, brewing. So, wanting to be keeping, these factions, calm, you would see a leader like him using constitutional language because it is convenient for them. It helps to buy time, and it deals with aspect of resistance from within. But when we get to the time that the real political objective arrives, which in this case was CAP 3, that rhetoric immediately evaporated. It was no longer there. And the agenda that Mnangagwa had from the beginning became visible. It became visible. So, what does this mean for Zimbabwe? What does this mean for us as Zimbabweans? When we get these political statements that collide, we must be in a position to be evaluating the political statements as they are being, spoken. You must evaluate them. We must not even start to talk about or to to get to a point whereby we want to be reassured by the sounding of that rhetoric. But we need to be people who think deeper. I know there are people that say kuti zvinhu zvamunoda kutaura izvo kuti izvo ningi vanhu must be critical, must be G. That doesn't exist mune vanhu because vanhu vanongoti chero zvazvaita. But if it is voter education, political education, we need to get our people to understand that sometimes when these leaders speak, don't take their word for it. Look beyond the words because there's a message hidden that is there. There's a message that will be, hidden. We cannot take the constitutional language at face value, especially with what happened with the Chabangus of this world, because there was a political incentives that was pointing in another direction. We have said CAP 3 is not just a legal amendment, but CAP 3, it was designed to show you how power operates behind the curtain, beyond the speeches, beyond the press conferences, and beyond the carefully crafted messages that are spoken in the public, at rallies, at press conferences, and at every fora that is designed to get people to listen and consume a political message. I want you to keep, this tension in mind. Because I spoke about this tension in terms of Emerson Mnangagwa. But I want to take that tension to the opposition. Allow me to take it to the opposition. Because if we want to be honest about any conversation about the future of Zimbabwe, we must be people who are prepared to look at both the opposition and the ruling party and consider their contradictions. Both of these, entities. It is important that we do that. Because if you want to look at the opposition side, one of the biggest issues right now is the widening gap. That is, the gap that is widening between what the opposition in Zimbabwe has been promising and what that opposition in Zimbabwe delivers in terms of them being visible, in terms of them bringing about the transformation or transformative, action. Because in Zimbabwe, we've known for years our opposition has positioned itself as an alternative. Time and time again, they've spoken to us, talking to us, telling us that they are a force to be reckoned with, a force that will bring a better Zimbabwe, a more accountable government, and a more democratic society. This has been the language of opposition movements in Zimbabwe. And it is the language that has resonated with millions of people who were tired, frustrated, and desperate for real change to happen in Zimbabwe. But here's the challenge. There's a challenge. Because when you make promises, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that you have to understand and one thing that you have to know in real life, promises are very loud. A promise is very loud, but when it comes to the action is faint. The rhetoric that comes from the opposition is very powerful, but when it comes to the strategy, it is not clear. All you get given is hope. And that hope that they ask people to hold on to is not being made by anything to do with organizational discipline, organizational unity, or any political groundwork that needs to be done to turn that hope into reality. You get told there's something that is happening on the ground. I wonder which ground is that? Is it a ground, that is in Mars? I don't know. I've tried asking people, hey, what is happening? I've gone to Sunningdale, speak to folks, on the ground. Hey, what's happening in Kong? They'll tell you nothing is happening here. But the language is there's political groundwork that is happening. And you're being asked to hope. Hold on to the hope. But if the hope is not being made by these three things that I've spoken about, that needs to be in place, that are needed to turn the hope into reality, what do you think happens? Chinoitika. Because on one hand, you are having this opposition that is preaching peace, stability, and a new political culture. We have had this flower, language, the language that speaks about the notions of non-violence, the language that, speaks to the notions of constitutionalism and national, healing. And these are important values. If you don't, subscribe to these values, you are dead as a dodo. These are the values that Zimbabwe desperately needs, and we need these values to underpin our existence. But then again, on one hand, if you have the same actors that are putting out these narratives, that on one hand they're putting these narratives, and then on the other hand, the same actors are revealing deep disagreements, internal fractures, and competing centers of authority. We are only left with visuals of statements that are contradictory to each other. Us as the public, that is all we are only left with. We are only left with visuals of leaders who are trying to be dominating another leader, or leaders who are trying to be challenging another leader. Those are the visuals that we end up seeing. And we begin to see alliances that are mushrooming, alliances that are coming into existence, and these alliances causing a shift without any explanation whatsoever. All you are left with as the people who wish for a strong opposition is a gossip. Oh, so and so did this. Oh, so and so why? Or so and so this. Oh, this one is a sellout. Oh, this one here, he saw, the struggle. Oh, that one, was bought. Those are the explanations that you end up being occupied with. But they are explanations that are not supported by any evidence. But the thing with such statements is they're believable when they are being spoken by somebody. But when somebody is speaking, the same thing that is more or less the same in terms of this selling out, nobody believes you. People start to say, where is the evidence? Bring the evidence. But on one side, you're not calling for the evidence. But on one side, you're calling for the evidence. That can only create confusion. It can only create doubt. And it creates a credibility gap that can be difficult to fill. Because you cannot preach unity on one hand, but on the other hand, your actions are displaying disunity. You cannot promise a better Zimbabwe while struggling to put together, to organize a better opposition. You cannot ask the people of Zimbabwe to keep hoping when the visible actions do not show a pathway to achieving the hope. Those things, ladies and gentlemen, they will not get us anywhere. We will not succeed. We will not get anywhere as a people. So when you're looking at these things, and people often want, to understand what then is in store for us. What are the strategies that are there to navigate this political landscape that is mad with all these things, that I'm talking about? Because the events of the past year or so, the events of the past year, they need to be understood by anyone who's very good at analyzing political behavior. Because we've been watching both landscapes, political landscape, one can easily argue and say what ZANU PF have been doing was a way of consolidating power through the constitutional amendments. And that is exactly what they've been doing. And when they see the opposition, ZANU PF is busy, doing this. I'm not saying, it is a good thing that, they were doing. Because that consolidation of, power through those, and, that constitutional amendment, which is unconstitutional anyway, it is leading us down a path that we should never, ever go down or follow. But at the same time, this is happening in the ruling party. And you think that this is the moment. This is where true opposition leadership is supposed to stand up and be counted. This is where true opposition leadership is supposed to be standing up and consolidate itself in the face of ZANU PF's consolidation of power through a constitutional amendment. But what we hear are promises. And yet, we understand that in the opposition, just like in ZANU PF, but ZANU PF have got, an advantage that, they can, even though there are internal disputes, where it matters most, they can come together and achieve, something. But in the opposition, we're struggling to consolidate ourselves. You've got the one leader was coming, calling, for unity of all people, come together, forget about what has happened, in the past. Come together. This is the time for the opposition, to unite. Yes, tese takatadzirana. Tese takakanganzirana. Hapana mutsvene. Saka ngachisiye zvese zvatakaitirana izvi tiuye tiungane. And then another one is coming with a different message altogether. And then another one is coming. You don't even understand what they are talking about. You don't even understand their messaging. You don't even understand what they are trying to achieve. What their existence, how is their existence going to be helping us? You will not even understand. At the end of their messaging, it will always be, oh yes, we are working towards a new Zimbabwe. We want a new Zimbabwe. The new Zimbabwe is within reach. We can almost taste it. Are you not smelling the air? The air of a new Zimbabwe, it's brewing. Can you not feel it? You can touch it. Try harder. You can touch it. You can feel it. But a lack of a coordinated action can easily translate the promises into untouchable political outcomes. And if you are not very careful, if we are not very careful, that status quo will be with us for a very long time to come. Because I've tried, to understand what this call for unity is all about. When these comrades cannot even find each other, what does it mean? What does it tell you? To me, I believe, for as much as we are saying in ZANU PF, we've got leaders who have lived, who have outlived their importance. They are no longer the people who should exist to try and impart wisdom on us, on this generation, because their time came and their time went. Because for wisdom to make sense, it must be left to the current generation to measure whatever it is that is being passed down to them against their own circumstances. And that right there equally applies to the opposition. There are people who have overstayed their welcome, I believe. And probably it's now the time for doing things in a different way. Probably it's now the time for burying the ghost of yesteryear opposition leadership and get to a point whereby we create a leadership that answers to the circumstances of the current generation. Because for years, a better Zimbabwe has been promised. A Zimbabwe that was going to be built on accountability, democratic renewal, and institutional reform. And we can't even do that in the opposition. And we know what those promises did to our, to the multitudes, to the millions of Zimbabweans. It inspired hope. But promises alone cannot build political power. Promises alone cannot protect the constitution. And CAP 3 is the clearest evidence that exists, today. Instead of plugging the gap is widening. The opposition rhetoric and the opposition action, the gap is widening. And it is widening at an exact moment when the country is calling or when the country needs the gap to be closed. Are you not tired of hearing one message today and hearing another message tomorrow and hearing a different message altogether? Because all these things, ladies and gentlemen, zvirikuitika is got my consequences. And Camp 3 has shown us the consequences. The consolidation of power through a constitutional amendment. Whilst in the opposition ranks, we are consolidating confusion. Nobody really knows what is happening. Yes, we are seeing organizations that are trying to do it for themselves, that are trying to create something. But at the end of the day, you got to step back and ask a question. Where is this going to get us to? A coordinated political project was executed by ZANU-PF, but in the opposition, we're even struggling to execute a coordinated political sentence, let alone action. And yet we get told, keep on hoping, keep on hoping, keep on hoping. Even though the hope is coming without strategy, ladies and gentlemen, that hope becomes exhausting and frustrating. Because if you're looking at CAP 3, which is now a law, it is not just a story about political, executive power. It is not just a story about anything else, that you can think of, but it is a story about political imbalance. And it can show you what organization can achieve. If one side appears to be organized, even though we understand that organization is superficial. But if it is superficial to the extent that whatever it is, it does carries the order of the day. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, can lead to the consolidation of the power, that I'm talking about. But on the other side, for as long as we remain, fragmented, I know you might be questioning, what I'm talking about now. You might be saying, so who should we be, coordinating, and who should we be consolidating with? And the rhetoric, always coming. These are sellouts. They sold I like, the message that Mendes always puts out there. Kuti kana munhu akatengesa vhoti yemunhu ankoje hatiri kumuona. Zvimwe zvese zvimungaite but hautengese vhoti yemunhu. Vari pakaipa. The only thing, or the only direction, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm seeing, I don't know whether you're seeing that. We are forever going to be questioning whether the opposition's promises of a better Zimbabwe are backed by discipline, unity, and any political groundwork that is required to deliver a just Zimbabwe, a peaceful Zimbabwe, a Zimbabwe that everybody can enjoy, a better Zimbabwe. Today is what? It's the 14th of July, 2026. 8 days from now is going to be 22 July, 2026. And we are going to have a conversation on that day. We shall have a conversation. A conversation of hope or a conversation of despair. So anyway, I think I've done enough talking. I want to bring people, into the conversation. I see Jonah Shipwa okay, I want to give him the opportunity, to speak. But you know what? As we discuss, this thing must also begin to be confronting the reality that when you see the actions that ZANU-PF did, the constitutional amendment, that did not happen in a vacuum. The passing of it did not happen in a vacuum. It passed because of the political environment where one side appeared to be strategically aligned to what was happening, and the other side appeared to be strategically drifting or was adrift. But I always make a clarion call to the opposition, because that is the side that, when push comes to shove, is the side that I belong to. If I'm deciding to be stepping away from the position of being a host that can allow others from the other side to come in and speak, I can feel for the opposition, right now, and say, unless if the gap between its messaging and its behavior is closed, Cap 3 will not be the last amendment that will catch them unprepared.